Welcome. I'm Brian Lockery, founder and lead publicist of ClearCut PR, and we're on a mission to get brilliant, hardworking entrepreneurs the publicity they deserve. And we're here today with Alex Golombiewski, another hardworking, brilliant entrepreneur, and we're going to talk about everything entrepreneurship, teaching versus coaching, and the reality show, The Blocks. Alex, welcome.
Thank you. So happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for flying out to New Jersey. Not everybody wants to come here, so thank you for that.
It's gorgeous. I love this place already.
The last guy that sat in your position was from New Jersey, and it was really easy to get him here. And I know how hard it was for you to come here, so thank you for that.
Worth it, I promise.
So why don't you tell the folks a little bit at home about who you are, what you're doing today versus, kind of how you got there. Just give me an intro of who you are.
Yeah, I love that. So my name is Alex Golombiewski. I was born in Ukraine, but I was raised in the United States. I came here when I was 4. And my entrepreneurial career started when I was 28. I started 2 businesses that failed back to back, rolled into a 3rd business that was acquired, and then put us into a 4th business that also was acquired. I am now a full-time coach and consultant specifically for early stage entrepreneurs, mostly entrepreneurs between the $500,000 to $5 million range.
We're going to talk about them in a little bit too, but it's good that we gave the credibility, but I talk a lot about getting my teeth kicked in the beginning as well too. Yeah. And I know you and I have spoken about that at length before. What's the value in that to actually, as an early stage entrepreneur, to experience failure? What's the value in that? What value did you take from it, and what value are other entrepreneurs going to take from trying and failing before actually succeeding?
And I love that question. I feel like entrepreneurs are almost professional failures, and the reason why I say that is because if you're really doing something entrepreneurial, it's novel, it's new, it hasn't been done, or at least you haven't done it. And so you're exposing yourself to so many new things that you're unqualified to do, and you're going to continue to screw up over and over and over again. And so the value of learning to fail early and building that muscle for it is because you need to develop an overcoming muscle to be able to overcome whatever you have coming your way. And if you don't have that belief in yourself that you can actually face whatever challenge you have coming ahead of you and grow in the difficulty of the challenges for it, it's going to be a struggle. I think former President Obama said it, and it was amazing. In one of his speeches, he said, if you're the guy at the top, you are left with all the worst decisions possible, because if there was a clear answer along the way or an obvious go-to, it would have been made along its way. And so you at the very top deal with the most difficult, challenging, hairy, no-win situations for it, and you got to develop a muscle to be able to do that.
So early stage entrepreneur, where does mindset come into it, right? Because the early stage entrepreneur goes into it kind of thinking like they know everything, and they don't see failure as an option until they're into it a little bit. So what would you tell the early stage entrepreneur that where failure may almost be imminent ahead of them too? Is it okay to fail, or should you just bank for success?
Yeah, no, I think we both share this one. I don't think there's even a question of, is it okay to fail? I think it's going to be failure after failure. And we say that, and let's unpack that word failure for a quick second. Like, failure is just getting something wrong and messing up and not hitting the mark for it too. But failure also has this connotation where it's a noun, where it's a permanent label on something and you have failed for it. And that is a cultural thing that has a lot of heavy negative connotations linked to it. Yeah. But honestly, the actual failing piece of that is just trying new stuff, being okay with it not working out, getting back into it, and continually retrying it for it. Yeah. I don't think there's any question. You have to lean into it with this mindset around, it's gonna be hard, I'm gonna screw up, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know everything that I'm doing, but I am capable, I know how to take the next step, yep, and I can get myself the support to do this that I wanna do.
The time factor becomes a huge attribute to failure. So what I usually tell people is, you haven't failed unless you've totally given up and unless you totally quit. Until then, you're just trying to succeed. So whether you get knocked down, whether your company folds, whatever happens, if you're an entrepreneur that's trying to succeed, then you are just doing that until you quit. Once you quit, you've actually failed.
I like that a lot.
What I find most is, and I'm trying to remember which book. I think it was in Good to Great. I read this with
Jim Collins, yeah.
With what was it, Jim
Collins?
Yeah, Jim Collins. And it was he gave an example where of prisoners that get captured. You get 3 prisoners that get captured in war. one prisoner says, I'll be okay as long as we get rescued before Christmas. And one of them's like, I don't care how long this takes, I'm going to make it out of it. I will die on this hill trying to do this. And I feel like in entrepreneurship, we need to approach that the same way. It's like, I don't care how long it takes, I'm going to do it. And I feel like entrepreneurs are like, I'm good, I got a 6-month runway, I got a 12-month runway, whereas they should figure out, really, I'm going to keep on doing this until I succeed. What do you think about that?
I love that. So like when I first started my entrepreneurial journey, it was 2013. And I remember vividly, my wife was pregnant with our son. That was our first. And I was sitting down in the kitchen table and I told her, hey, we're about to jump into entrepreneurship. We're doing it for these reasons. We want to change our family legacy for it, but it is going to be one of the most difficult things that we do. And it's going to be a good 2 to 3 years of insane difficulty. And I laugh now because it wasn't just 2 or 3 years. It ended up being about 6 years of ridiculous amounts of failure after failure after failure, losing so much of our like money, livelihood, time, mental energy, mental health. That's what it took. But at some point it shifted from, okay, this is going to take us this long, to what you're talking about, which is I'm unwilling to not make this work. Yeah. And that you have to have some level of determination or grit to see it through, which is really hard, Brian, because like you don't know, like then it becomes the question is, do you pivot or do you persevere? Do you stick with it or do you stop and shift to a different one? Because this is the hard part about it. You also have to read the tea leaves in the market. And either A, you don't listen to them and you go through it anyway and you potentially build something really meaningful, or B, you're spinning your wheels with everybody's telling you, the market is telling you, you should shift. What's your thoughts there?
It's so important. So it's like, you know, after getting my teeth kicked in for a little bit too, one of my most successful ventures, which was this dumpster company, I knew, and you and I had spoken about this before, I knew that I had a 6-month runway, and I didn't like the fact that I gave myself a 6-month runway, because at this point, I at least knew that I had the good sense to say that I need a longer runway. I don't know how long it is, but I need a much longer. And this is where sacrifice comes into it, and this is where the entrepreneur that makes it, they need to be willing to sacrifice. So I looked and I saw that I had a 6-month runway, and I didn't want to give myself a time limit. So I made the sacrifice, and as a grown-ass adult, I took my kids and I moved into my brother's basement to give myself a longer runway for my business. And thank God, because that business needed about a 1.5 to 2 year runway until I was actually able to make it a sustainable business. So for me, it's you know, if you're giving yourself a time limit and a determined timeline runway, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure already.
Yeah, I agree with that. What's fascinating about entrepreneurship is when you're first starting, you don't know what to do. You don't know where your most effective time is. You don't know how to do so many things. And so what you do is you just throw hours at the problem. You throw yourself often bodily at the problem until like you work it out and figure it out. And I hate that is kind of this blunt instrument of like you just keep coming at it until you can finally get through it. But the reality is like that's probably the most proven way to do that. Unless you go even business school. You can go through business school and leave with an MBA and then launch something and still fail it completely. Like that doesn't make you any more qualified than like what we didn't graduate college at all. Like we just went into it and we went after it for it too. So I think at some level, nothing's going to prepare you for entrepreneurship. At some level, you have to like put your head down and do the sacrifice.
Yeah, for sure. I was actually speaking with somebody the other day, and I kind of had to tell them about the caveman mentality in entrepreneurship. So the person was very brilliant, right? They're very smart. They knew a lot of things about the legal system, and they're developing an educational platform for LSATs, and then to take the bar and to do that. And they themselves were very brilliant and have already done these things. But they've been working on this for 2 years at this point, and they still haven't launched.
They haven't launched?
They haven't launched. They're developing their product. They keep on saying they're developing. They're like, we're about to launch. And I asked them. I said, well, what's your pipeline look like? You're about to launch, so you're loading up your pipeline. Oh, we don't have that yet. I said, look, you're very smart at what you do, and you might be the most brilliant person that's doing it. But I gave him the caveman analogy, which is there's 2 types of cavemen. There's the caveman that says, I'm hungry, because like we're all primal. At the end of the day, we have to go out and we have to hunt. As business owners, we have to go out and we have to hunt for our business and our leads and everything like that. I said that there's the caveman who says, I'm hungry, picks up the sharpest or heaviest tool closest to him, and then goes out and goes to hunt. Now, obviously, some of the things that we're afraid of in business, which are you might go get your face ripped off. Like back in the day when we had to do this as a cave, once you leave the cave, and in business, once you leave your comfort zone, you go start marketing, you know, the consequences were different. You might get your face ripped off and you might die, right? Here, you might experience a little bit of ridicule. But I said to him, look, there's two types of cavemen. The one that's going to pick up the sharpest, heaviest object, and he's going to go hunt for his meal. And then there's the one that stays inside the cave and makes his bow and arrow, and he sharpens all his arrows, and he does all those things. And by the time he goes out to hunt for his meal, the caveman who grabbed the biggest, heaviest club stole his meal.
Yeah.
So I said, you have to have a little bit of both. You can't be the caveman, but you do have to be that person, like, need leads, go get leads. And you also have to be that person that's like, all right, well, let me go out and get leads and see how close I get to getting my face ripped off. And then maybe I'll come back and sharpen up my tools and do some things like that.
I love that because, like, we want to add this piece. Let's add this to the discussion. Yeah. Yes, you need grit. Yes, you need to go through and fail. Yes, you need to, like, be in it for the long haul for it too. But you also need to do the right things. And what you talked about, I think I've been now a coach. I've coached 200 plus people across lots of different kinds of companies and stages. The number one thing I see in entrepreneurs that is really fascinating, that is a common link, because we're humans, is when things are unknown or new to us or uncomfortable, we shy away from that often most important work, the nebulous work that is hard to nail down. We avoid that and we check email, knock things off our to-do list. Like, it's these low value tasks that make us feel busy but aren't actually effective or productive, but they make us feel like a hero. And so, to that point, the caveman analogy, if you're in your startup and you're 2 years in and you're building and you haven't launched yet for it too, there's something else at play there. And I don't want to speak ill of them, but bro, like, that's the worst way to do it in today's era, because it isn't the big that eat the small, it's the fast that eat the slow. And being able to pick up that tool, head on out there, start adapting right away, learn better and faster than everybody else, you will learn and move faster than anybody who's sitting there sharpening tools and trying to optimize.
It's that build, measure, learn cycle, right? That we always talk about. Now, to be as clear cut as possible, why don't you tell me what one of the most high value things an early stage entrepreneur can do to be meaningful to their business?
Okay, I love that. I think there's if it's an early stage entrepreneur, and let's say I'm going to cut it out to a couple different ways. If you are just starting out, like, you don't have your first couple of customers yet, you're really working it, the number one thing you should be focused on is delighting 3 to 5 customers. And you do that in as unscalable means as you possibly can. It could be your neighbors, you can make cold calls, you can go knock on doors, you can go do partnerships. The goal at this very early stage is just to get your product or service into people's hands and get real feedback. Vote with your wallet feedback for it and see how far off the mark you are. That is, like, number one. If you have your first couple of customers for it, then you're really graduating to the second one, which is, I've proven out that my product or service can deliver the value that I've set out to do and people will pay for it. Now comes, how do I find more customers and do that in a scalable way? This is where a lot of people come to ClearCut PR, I imagine, because now they have something that is resonating, but now they need to take this magic and collide with the market and understand how to do that in mass. That is where finding somebody who's an expert or using educational shows like this can get you a lot further with replicating those first 3 to 5 customers and doing your next 25 to 30 customers for it. And so, back to this original point, I'm pretty uncompromising that until you're at $1 million in revenue, you should put all of your energy with just revenue generation, getting customers, delighting them, every single one.
And we're super clear about this all the time, is that PR is gonna lubricate your funnel, it's gonna lubricate your marketing process. It's never gonna be the magic bullet.
Correct.
So before you even get PR, make sure that you have a solid landing page, a solid funnel, a good way to build these customers and then get customers to then delight. One thing I want you to talk about, because I've heard you speak about it so eloquently before too, is once you have these customers and you delight them, I've watched you coach entrepreneurs on the questions that you should ask them once you have them, to see pretty much what delights them about your product. So at this point, when you have those customers, and these are good customers, you now have a good relationship with them, good rapport, what types of questions should you ask them to find more of them?
Yeah, I love that. So I want to go over to 2 parts of this. I'm going to answer a question you didn't ask, but I think it's important. When you are first talking to your initial customers, it isn't enough to say, did you find it valuable, or, would you pay for it? I think there's a piece of that. One of my favorite and I don't know who to give due credit to. One of my favorite questions to ask of whether or not you're actually delivering the value is, if this disappeared tomorrow, how disappointed on a 1 to 10 scale would you be? And if they say like 6, then your product or service is not instrumental enough and that you have work to do. So I think that that is something there too. But once you have your first 3 to 5 and you want to replicate them, that is your best shot at understanding how to scale your business, your customers. And I asked them questions like, okay, tell me about how you would describe this to somebody else in your own words. And to the extent that you can record this and not lead the witness and be very objective with how you ask it, I think is important. But how would you describe this product or service to other people? You know, what would make you like recommend it to somebody else, or even tell me about what you used before and what it replaced. Like, these are all amazing questions trying to get at the root, because it isn't enough that you know that somebody bought it. It's very important that you know why they bought it, because that's the only way you can actually replicate that in mass. And so you use your first couple customers that you gain in unscalable ways. Find the ones that use your product the most, that are delighted the most. Use them to create an ideal customer persona of the kinds of customers that you need, and then just find more of them.
Yeah, I love this too, because this is early stage entrepreneur filling your pipeline and then multiplying that pipeline with similar folks too. But I'm going to transition. I'm going to take a step a little bit backwards too, and this is something we were speaking about off camera earlier before, and we labeled it Mount Stupid. And this is something that I'm guilty of myself, and I can talk about my own experiences for that. So I want you to kind of clarify and label what Mount Stupid is and the valley that comes after Mount Stupid, so that we can talk a little bit.
Yeah, I love this. So what Brian is referencing is there's a concept called the Dunning-Kruger effect, and effectively the top horizon is how smart you think you are, how much you know about a subject, and this is how long you've been after it. And what happens is when you first start, and you get into a new subject, company, whatever it is, you feel like you very quickly learn a lot, and you get the lay of the land, and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. There's this, this is how it's connected. Okay, I get the basic gist of it. And you feel this false sense of confidence and capability, but really it's called Mount Stupid. You're at the very top of the video, the asymptote over here, where you start realizing that it isn't that simple. You missed a lot of detail. There's way more nuance and sophistication for it too. There's way more people who know way more about it. And it doesn't take long for you to realize that you actually know very freaking little. You're an idiot. You're one of the most newest, inexperienced people in whatever trade you're doing. And then it's this long trek back towards actual mastery for it too. And so it goes, the Mount Stupid part is it launches, people believe that they know everything and they got it, and then they realize that they're idiots and they have to actually start building that confidence over time.
And that's not exclusive to early stage entrepreneurs. After an exit, I'll give a great example here. After an exit, some of you guys know I opened up a mobile billboard business. So we looked at the billboard business and we said, oh, these are billboards. This is an archaic way of doing business. I'm a really good marketer. I'm going to be able to buy a lot of these billboards, and I'll be able to get people to buy these billboards because they're doing it all wrong, and I think it's very archaic business. Well, we went out, we bought some very expensive equipment, some very expensive trucks, and I thought I was in the billboard business. And then as I was climbing Mount Stupid, I got up there and I figured out that, oh shit, I'm not in the billboard business. There's this new term out here called programmatic advertising that I know nothing about. Right down into the valley.
And then you're like, oh shit, now I need to know everything about it. Now you're diving back to school, right?
And I knew nothing about it. And I'm like, I'm pot committed now. I bought these things. I'm in it for time. I'm in it for money. And if I want to make this meaningful, I now need to learn about this new thing. And sometimes that's where the entrepreneur fails. And sometimes they just say, nope, I'm going back to what we were talking about before. I'm going to succeed no matter what. So I'm going to go learn about this new thing, and I'm going to make it meaningful. What do you think that the best thing an early stage entrepreneur could do once they're sliding into that valley to get the hell out of it?
Okay, I love that. Well, one, it depends on whether or not you want to weather it. In your case, you decided to weather it, and you're like, well, shoot, there's way more here than I realize, and I just need to go to work and get educated. That is one way to do that. The other way is like, okay, one, I want to step back and say, every one of my ventures I've ever jumped into, I was woefully ignorant with like what it actually required. And I do believe that that level of, or some level of ignorance is required for us entrepreneurs, because if you had actually told me how long it would take and the amount of risk and all the back, I probably wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
And so, real talk, some level of naivete comes with the territory, but I believe that how about this? Any other company you could have done outside of like the mobile advertising had its own Mount Stupid moment too.
Yeah.
And so any single place you go, you're gonna dive into where there's a problem. There's way more sophisticated nuance. I'm more of a fan of saying, let's dive in anyway. Let's work it out because there's still opportunity potentially there. It still comes down to that pivot or persevere. Do we stick with it? If it's far more work and you don't see a path, then yeah, bail.
Yeah, I became the captured prisoner who said, I'm going to get out of this no matter what.
Yeah.
And some entrepreneurs find themselves saying, I'll be good as long as I get out of this
by this time.
Yeah, by this time, and I didn't give myself a time limit there. And thank God at that time I had I at least had resources from a previous exit that I was able to weather that storm. But whereas my resources at that time were money, the best resource you can give yourself as an entrepreneur is time. I think to be able to get out of that valley and do those kind of things. So I want to speak a little bit, just transitioning about that. I want to speak a little bit about adversity in entrepreneurship from your own experience too. And I know we spoke about it a little bit too. But some of your earlier ventures caused adversity in certain ways. Not so much technical, as in I couldn't break through this market, but more so intrinsic and internally they caused a little bit of adversity too. And this is a big thing because entrepreneurship is lonely, and a lot of people sometimes feel like they're going through that by themselves, and that can cause its own adversity. So, without getting too into detail, what's some of the internal adversity that you faced, and how did you overcome it?
The biggest thing that comes to mind is that what you said, heavy lies the crown. It's very lonely when you're the one doing it. Even for me, I had business partners, I had co-founders for it too, and so that was really great to have them as resources to lean on. But it's still, ultimately, I was the CEO, it ultimately fell on me to make that decision. That I was actually a bit unprepared for. And it took me a long time to recognize that I need to spend a lot more time giving myself support, self-care, margins, sleep well, eat, like all of that stuff, because my effectiveness as a leader is gonna be made or broken by my decision making. And if you make poor decisions because you're not in a good space, it'll affect you. And so one of the biggest things from a diversity standpoint is recognize when you need to grind and when you need to stop and be deliberate around the decisions that you make. We talked about this last night around a lot of people when they first start, they just grind, and then they have different products or services, but they don't yet know where is the most profitable growth. They don't yet know where they should be spending their time for it. And I think it's important that you take stock of whatever's in front of you and make intentional decisions so you're not just guided or pulled by your day. You're stopping and making intentional decisions for it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I would add that I think that self-awareness is key here, and knowing at kind of where you're at. Because when you're talking about the grind, it's like you can't be on turbo all the time, right? Like if you think of like the old video games and everything, like you get like a little bit of turbo, right? Mm-hmm. But you can't ride turbo all the time. And I'm gonna show my age here. If you remember, do you ever play NFL Blitz?
No, but
so NFL Blitz, as you're running down the field, like you get a little bit of turbo, but like once that turbo runs out, like that's it.
Yeah,
you're gassed and you're done. And as an entrepreneur, you can't run on turbo all the time. So I tell people that usually when I'm coaching them, I said self-awareness is key here. And especially as a solopreneur, and we're going to come into that conversation in a little bit. But as a solopreneur, there's tasks that need to be done. There's accounting. There's answering emails. There's all the dumb little things that you need to do to check off because you have to do them. And then there's the high value stuff you need to do. The creative thinking. How am I going to form this marketing funnel? So I think self-awareness is key here because you got to look inside yourself and you got to say, how spent am I right now?
Yeah.
Do I have a lot of energy? And if so, can I build my funnel? Can I nurture my clients? Can I go be that emotional person in front of people? Because building relationships takes energy.
Yeah.
Or am I low energy right now? Is now the time to just maybe do my receivables and my accounting, answer the basic emails that have that? And the self-awareness of what energy level you're at is gonna be key in that time to make sure that that you don't fall into just kind of holding down that turbo button, because eventually you're gonna burn out.
You know what? It's so interesting because entrepreneurship, yes, you're business building, yes, you're learning about marketing, sales, and everything else, but it is such a reflection of your own personal development, because you do have to check in with yourself. You do have to be intellectually honest when you're out of gas and you're gonna be sitting at a piece of paper that you're gonna need to write content, develop some plan, and you're just spinning wheels, you're not doing yourself any favor. And that's where we got to be really careful, because most entrepreneurs start they don't build a business, they build a job. Right? They build a job where they have to work and they're constantly required for it. And that is one of the things that holds entrepreneurs back, because they're not able to make those decisions, work on the business, and like get them out of these plateaus or ruts that businesses often fall into.
Go deep on that for a second. Give me an example of building a job versus building a business.
Okay, love that. Every single time you start, how about most entrepreneurs, when they start a business, it is because they see, they have a trade skill and they see a problem and they think that they can do it pretty well. And so they're not actually intending to build a conglomerate organization with a bunch of employees. They're really just trying to solve that problem. They're like, hey, I can do that. And so in the book, E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, he talks about this extremely well, and just talks about how if you own a job, or you get into, let's use bakery as an example. You're going to be an amazing baker, but to open up a bakery takes a lot of different things. And most times people think that they're a great baker, so they open up a bakery and they're doing the baking. But to make a really good bakery, there's marketing, there's location and position, there's the menu and driving traffic, and there's all these things that are non-baking related. That's the stuff that I think eats people's lunch. And if they're not careful, they will spend all their energy believing that if they just bake better, bake more, bake better quality, they can build a good baking business, but they actually have to take their eye off of that and now shift over to all the other things that are required to actually build a business. And so most of the time, that is that shift that most entrepreneurs struggle with, where they feel like they still need to have hands up, rolled up sleeves in the business, or they can't afford to replace themselves. But really, there's an opportunity cost that they're paying unwittingly, because the longer they're in there, the less that they're actually creating additional growth strategies, or generating more customer demand, or getting something that allows them to grow the actual business.
Yeah, I love that example. I couldn't have said it better myself, and I don't think anything else needs to be said on that, just because it was an amazing point. I do want to slide back to what you were talking about before, though, and it's kind of on the same topic, is the starting a business with co-founders versus starting a business as a solopreneur, which, a lot of people identify as solopreneurs, and they are, and a lot of people will start a business with a co-founder. Is there a right way, and why?
No, I don't think there's a right way. I think there's pros and cons, and you gotta have to choose your problems. For me, I don't think I could have done it without my co-founders, because I don't think I had the drive by myself to do it no matter what. I think I developed that over time, but I think early on I needed the camaraderie and the support with other people for all of us together. But let's talk about co-founder relationships. So yes. The first 4 companies all had, in fact, the first 5 companies all had co-founders with it. And that's great. They were my brother and my best friend, and eventually my brother-in-law, so they were people that I knew. And it's great because it allows you to all live and die together. We all didn't pay ourselves. We all sacrificed, and it allowed us to stretch our resources for longer for it. But the other struggle is you're getting married, and there was difficult conversations around equity, around value and worth, difficulty in decision making for it. The tendency that I tend to say is, one, don't do equal partnerships. Make sure governance, it can be equal in equity. I don't think you care about that. Somebody's got to have the tie-breaking vote. Someone's got to have the decision-making authority for it. And then the second thing I would do is, if you're considering a co-founder or a partner, start slow. Don't get married. Don't consummate the marriage. Start with a small, simple agreement. Do it for 6 months. See if whatever job that they were going to come in and help with, that they're actually able to do that. And then you guys can work side by side, and it isn't some honeymoon phase that you'll struggle with. So why didn't you ever choose a co-founder? I'm curious.
So I never had a co-founder operationally. I had co-founders financially.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And the good part about that was even as a solopreneur, even though I was the operator in there, I kind of felt like I had an emotional support system, because that person was technically with me financially, although I was the person, and of course it felt lonely at times, because if I wasn't operating correctly, or if I wasn't getting the results or anything like that as a solopreneur, I can't go to my financial person and be like, well, take a look at my marketing funnel. Where do you think I'm messing up over here? How can I change the information stage of the funnel? do you need more money? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like that was their answer. So, emotionally, it was cool because these were people that believed in me, and they knew the process of entrepreneurship. So they allowed me to sit down and vent emotionally with them. And then it's like, okay, but also get the hell back up and go make it happen. You know what I mean? And that part felt lonely. But it didn't feel lonely as in there was nobody I can talk to, and it didn't feel lonely as in like, oh my God, I can't tell this financial backer that we're sucking right now. You know what I mean? At least for me, choosing the financial backer that understood entrepreneurship was important, because I can have those conversations with them, and I was able to vent, and I was able to tell them why I thought I was failing at the time, and then once I dried my eyes, I got back on the horse and I got right the hell back at it.
Do you generally recommend people to be solopreneurs?
I don't believe that anyone should be. I think that you'll have more success with a partner in whatever capacity you call that partner, whether it's a co-founder, whether it's a financial backer, whether it's a husband or a wife that believes in what you're doing and doesn't resent your mission, whatever it is. Even solopreneurs, I feel like, have partners in some capacity.
Yeah, I agree with that. Actually, there's that African proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I think that has a lot of truth to it.
I think you're reading my mind, because I was going to say, I didn't know the exact words. I was going to be like, I know you know this proverb. I know you know it. I was going to, but you teed it up already. It's like telepathically. Like,
yeah, we're in sync, man.
Yeah, we're already connected for sure. So you have this history. You have this history of getting your teeth kicked in.
Oh, yeah.
And then being successful, and then being very successful, and now you're at the stage where you're an entrepreneur. And every entrepreneur who's achieved some point of success, I always say that we're almost obligated to give back, and we're almost obligated to help out other earlier entrepreneurs that are in this now as well too, kind of bringing this late stage wisdom to their early stage entrepreneur. Talk about some of the things that you're doing today in your business, and what are you working on as a business, and how is it helping earlier stage entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I love that. So we met at the Blocks, right? It was season 10, I think, that we were both on over there too. Yep. And I love what Wes Bergman said. I think it was on that season. He said, it's incumbent on us to send the elevator back down for somebody else. And I loved it. And that week was the first time I got that much exposure to the Blocks. I don't know how much your audience knows about the Blocks, but like, it was a great time where you got to meet it was like 70 contestants, so many different types of business, and be able to speak into it. That lit me up so much that I left season 10, and then I did season 13. I left season 13 recording, deciding that I'm going to be a coach and consultant. It was the most amazing experience for it too. I think by the second day, I got asked like 3 times, do you do professional coaching? And I said no. By the 4th time, I was like, I'm going to start saying yes. This is amazing. So I am now a professional coach and consultant for entrepreneurs. And we've talked about this, like a lot of times the coach and consultant get thrown together, but really those are 2 very separate things for it. The coach part of it is really talking to the individual, and it isn't like mindset lifestyle coaching. We've talked about that bullshit, and that has its own stuff. It's much more about understanding what needs to be done and who you are as a person, and how you relate to that kind of work, and putting yourself in the best position to crush it. And that can mean sometimes questioning the direction. Like a really good coach, I think, asks really good questions, but a really great coach is listening to what you're not saying, and like fills in all the gaps. And so that's kind of the gist where I'm a coach. I love helping people break through for it, but I've also been an entrepreneur. I've now sold 2 businesses. I've got them bought out. I've licensed one. We got bought out from a 4th. So I've had a lot of like back and forth for it. And so I've helped companies now in the $0 to $5 million range with their growth and strategy, with their hiring and leadership development, and with their operations and AI. And so what that means is like my coaching world is both talking to the individual, but also I have a lot of know-how that can speak directly into like the business of how to build something that's really meaningful.
So before we go any further on that, and I do want to go deep on that, how would somebody that's looking for coaching get in touch with you?
I love that. So alexg.consulting is the website. It's probably the best way to do that, alexg.consulting. At the very bottom, you have my Facebook, X, Instagram. You can go through and connect with me. If you have a question, this is where you and I resonate. We're kind of like a no bullshit kind of kind of entrepreneurs for it. If you have a question or are struggling with the decision, like reach out to me. Like this is one of those things where a small touch with somebody with experience can help you make a lot of better decisions. And I offer 30-minute consults to anybody who like wants to workshop and work through something.
You and I have spoken at length about this, though, too, and I love that you got into coaching and consulting because I feel like the market doesn't have enough good actual coaches and consultants that have achieved their own success to teach other entrepreneurs. And you and I have spoke with that. One of the biggest challenges that you have is that you have to market to people and tell them that you're legit in a market full of frauds. Now I've been around long enough to see those frauds, and that there lies your biggest challenge is to convince somebody who hasn't worked with you that you're not a fraud before they actually work with you. Now I'm here to say and to vouch to say that I've seen my fair share of hack coaches and teachers and consultants out there, and I couldn't be more pleased when you told me that you were actually going into this, because I said now this world is finally getting an actual person that's going to help them and not just take their money because they're a good marketer. You're a good marketer, but you're also a really good coach and consultant that's going to bring them the results. And when we speak about this, we speak about the differences between coaching and teaching. Can you give me an example of each of those and how you would define it?
You know what? I love that. And I'm early in this discovery too, that what we can talk about. But yeah, when I first jumped into coaching, my general approach is like, hey, I know the answer for it. What is the question? And I will help you with whatever you need. What I found very early on in my coaching is that giving somebody an answer isn't enough, because oftentimes there's something else stopping him. It's either worry, anxiety, uncertainty, distraction, and those are very different things. And so the way I divide this now is teaching is just knowing what the question is, the problem, and providing the answer. But knowledge isn't enough for a lot of us entrepreneurs. We don't know, we have a lot of answers, but we don't know where to spend most of our time. We don't know the relationships that are most important. We don't have certainty that any project or initiative is going to be successful for it. And so there's all these things that we can devote our time to, that getting direct answers may not be enough. It is also helping somebody stop and develop the exercises to evaluate decisions, to be more intentional around how they approach them. And like in a lot of my clients, recognize their own traumas and idiosyncrasies and how some of that can help sabotage or help empower your effectiveness as an actual entrepreneur.
Yeah, and a good coach can actually do both at the same time. You could teach and you can coach. And to your point, you're reading in between lines and you're hearing the things that they're not saying, which is really going to be your compass into where you need to take that entrepreneur at that point. Give me some examples of things that the early stage entrepreneur needs to be taught.
Ooh, taught is. Okay, this is going to be interesting. Early stage entrepreneurship, there's a lot that you need to teach, and that is like all the just-in-time learning around like how to set up a CRM, how to hire a contractor for a website, how to create copy for it. Like there's all these how things that when I talk to an entrepreneur, I very quickly say, okay, great. Here, you need to know enough to where you're not going to smack your face with a rake in the yard, and really just know enough to where you need to know enough, where you know what you don't know, is what that comes down to. And those are often, I call it just-in-time learnings of, I need to do a email newsletter. What is effective email copy? Like, how does that work? And that's a teaching thing. Mm-hmm. The coaching thing is often very different, and that is people know that they should get customers, but oftentimes, I fell into this too. I think all of us do. We get myopic and we get busy for it. And these entrepreneurs know that they need to get customers, but they find themselves spending time on accounting or setting up CRMs or setting up future commission plans for salespeople for it too. That isn't a teaching intervention. That is a coaching intervention, because what's happening is they know they need to be spending time on getting customers, but for some reason or another, they're not spending that time doing that. Like we've all felt that, man. How often, how do you get through that where you know you should be doing something, but you find yourself not doing that?
That's a struggle,
right?
Because then that becomes like self-awareness, and how much energy do I have, and now I need to start, using innovation accounting rather than using my money. I need to start, what's the word? I need to start allocating my time better. So as a later stage entrepreneur, like I can always tell when I'm in a conversation with a later stage entrepreneur, because they talk about allocating resources and money and where to allocate it and how much and where they see the roadblocks in their company. But they don't often get into conversations of where they should also be allocating their time, and sometimes they go hand in hand. So
that's super critical, though.
I get a whole bunch of like nerdy charts on if I allocate more of my time over here, what do I think the result can be, and how could I forecast that result? And if I allocate my money here, what roadblocks is that going to take away, which is going to allow my bottleneck to open up possibly as well too. So me, that's when I have that creative energy, I start analyzing my business that way, which is I start allocating resources, time, and money to the parts that I think in my business need to grow the most, and I start looking at that. Speaking of teaching, though, and I do want to give a plug to anybody that might be watching too, and maybe you can verify this as well too. I have to give him a shout out too. I feel like he is, in terms of teaching, the best professor in startup education that I've ever met. Wes Bergman with Beta Blocks and the Blocks, and he has multiple forms of curriculum that you can take, whether it be in the form of the reality show that they do, which is that 1 week incubator, or the Beta Blocks program where you can sign up and then you can get taught that curriculum in the first in the first 2 months, and then they layer on mentorship and coaching. I believe that for anyone that's looking to get to get taught entrepreneurship, that may be watching this, that might be a good first step. And the reason I say that is because you and I have said that a lot of times the biggest bottleneck for an early stage entrepreneur is that they don't know how to do sales and marketing, because once you know how to do sales and marketing the best, you'll get that first $1 million, and then you move on to what I was just talking about. Okay, now I have resources. Now I need a coach that will show me and will coach me on how to allocate those resources to grow this $1 million business into a $10 million business. What do you feel about the teachings of the Blocks and the Beta Blocks program for the early stage entrepreneur, and how valuable is that?
Yeah, it's world class. It literally, and it's easy for us to sit here and endorse because we're part of that whole thing, but we don't get paid. I don't get paid from the Blocks or Wes. We have no financial arrangement like that, and yet I am blown away by how accessible he's made it, how clear he's made it, and how like actionable all of it is. Like, I feel like there's still a ton to learn if you're go to like the Blocks that week event or the graduate program. You get thrown so much, but it is so practical and in a clear fashion that I think by the end of it, one, you're not going to absorb all of it, but what you will, though, is take some of the most key critical pieces, and to the one, everybody I've talked to that's gone through that whole Blocks program has said this has completely changed and altered their trajectory of the company, because now they see what they didn't see before. That's something. And can I plus one more thing? And I don't want to poo-poo like entrepreneurial programs in colleges and whatnot, but the reason why Wes has a competitive advantage and the Blocks as a whole to a lot of these other programs is there's accreditations, there's learning and class outcomes, and there's all these bureaucracy pieces to check off the boxes with like a lot of these like accredited programs, and that makes them slow. That makes them behind immediately with like as soon as they update the curriculum, they're behind. Because it takes so long. And what the Blocks excels at is like every single time he does a class, he's making changes and updates and tweaking it to make sure it's the most applicable and like effective program.
Yeah, and you might not want to shit on it, but I will. When colleges teach entrepreneurship, I've seen a lot of these programs, and this kind of goes back to the conversation we had before about the caveman that wants to sharpen his tools. Mm-hmm. And they show you how to sharpen your tools, and they show you how to do that. But what they don't teach you how to do is to go out and hunt and not get your face ripped off.
100%, man.
And that's where I feel like programs like the Blocks are so meaningful. And they're also, to your point, they're going to teach you. They're going to show you the things that you don't know. So at the very least, after those teachings, you leave the Blocks or you leave Beta Blocks with a compass of where you need to now continue to. It's not the end all be all, but it's the start. And they now leave you with they put a compass in your hand of what direction you need to go in as an entrepreneur. What kind of coaching do I need to go seek now that I've been taught the right things and I've been shown the things that I don't know, and the light has been shined on the dark spots of entrepreneurship that I didn't see. Now I know exactly what type of coach I need. Know exactly what type of things I need to expand my learning on, and then what type of things I need to be coached on as well. Which kind of brings me up to the next point, which is the coaching. give me now that we've given examples of teaching an early stage entrepreneur, what are some examples of coaching an early stage entrepreneur, and how do you use them in your business?
Yeah. The number one thing that I see very quickly is I either meet with people weekly, bi-weekly, or every month. And one of the things that we do with a coach is set up clear accountabilities, because like as an entrepreneur, solopreneur, even with partners, like it's easy to let yourself slide and give yourself an out. And having a relationship like a coach can set up really great accountability and not only empower your ability to be effective, but also just put out more stuff, because you can set short-term aggressive goals and you have somebody who you're gonna have to face at the end of that. And so what I do is often have these goals, and then when I see that we're not hitting these goals despite best efforts and intentions, that is the coaching part where I come in, because I've given them the answers. We've agreed that this is the right course for it too, and if it's not getting done, that is where I start picking apart and say, okay, walk me through where you spent your time, walk me through why you chose to do this over here too, walk me through, and I start picking it apart and start analyzing and identifying why things aren't getting done. And there's always a multitude of reasons for it, but it always has to do with the entrepreneur's own hangups, perception of the world, belief about themselves, belief and confidence for it. And so I've seen it range from, anxiety and sleeplessness and just like poor health to people saying, I want to be the hero. I feel really good when I do these little things and do things for the customers, but that takes away time from them doing like the deep work for it. And it's me helping them find that route. And when they find that route, I don't have to tell them anything. There's this dawning awareness that I see where they're like, shoot, that is why I do what I do. And then it becomes, let's change this out. Like a good example is one of my clients right now does have that. He has a problem by his own admission that he's like, hey, I'm a people pleaser. And I do these light little customer things because they really help me feel really good. And my coaching back to him was like, okay, you now need to celebrate saying no. And what I want you to do is when you start saying no to these things, text me and I will celebrate with you. And we're slowly changing his behavior to value these longer term, almost more nebulous and complex things, because that is what's going to take his business from $700 to $7 million a year. And no amount of teaching is going to help somebody do that. That is where they have to arrive at their own.
Coaching is absolutely critical there too. So coaching a people pleaser is something I've had to encounter in the past. And the way I've broken through to it, just to give very clear examples, is that coaching a people pleaser has no respect for their own time.
Oh, I love that. That is so good. Yes.
They have no respect for their own time. So when I spoke about before, as an entrepreneur, we have two resources, money and time.
Yeah.
So when you have no respect for your own time, that is the equivalent to me of just having no respect for your own money and just spending money frivolously as much as you can. As an early stage entrepreneur, we don't have all the money. We have all the time, and we are the brilliant, hardworking entrepreneur. And our time is a lot of times our biggest resource.
Yeah.
Once I put that into perspective for the entrepreneur, that your time right now is your most valuable resource, and you need to have a little bit more respect for it, and where you allocate these resources, it's an aha moment a lot of times for the entrepreneur too. So how would you coach this people pleaser? How would you best get across the point that they need to be spending their time wisely as an early stage entrepreneur, because they're not at the point yet where they can just disregard their own time?
Yeah, man, that is where a good coach gets separated from a great coach, because a good coach can like spot that and say, hey, here's what you're doing wrong. Be aware of all of that. But there's something very different. You watched the movie Inception?
Yep.
Love that movie. One of the top 5 films of my life. But what they got really right is that if it is not your idea, it is so easily rejected. It is somebody else's thought. And even if it's the right thought, even if it's applicable, and even if it's true, it still feels like somebody else's thought. And so it's easy to disregard, or it's easy to shelve it and trivialize it. But if you come up and arrive to your own conclusion and recognize that through questions, the way I generally do it is always through questions of like, okay, walk me through where you spent your time, we find out and identify, and he's a people pleaser. Then it comes down to, okay, walk me through what you're not getting done. Walk me through what you should be doing. Walk me through, if you had done that, what is the impact on it?
Yeah.
And they start arriving to their own conclusions of like, wow, if I had just spent that time here, I may not have gotten accolades, but this would have been off my plate. We would have gotten this done for it too. That is the difficult part, but as also the part that changes or makes the most lasting change for it.
So using the Inception metaphor, if you will, so you're basically Leonardo DiCaprio getting them to open up their own safe.
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly what it is.
They need to open the safe because it needs to be their idea.
That's it. And they open the safe. They have to let you in, or they won't be effective. And I'll say this: if you're looking for a coach or even considering a coach, the rapport and connection matters so much because you need to be able to share your dirty shit. You need to share your insecurities and your anxieties and your failures and how all of those things are so important, and you need to be good at feeling seen by at least one other person. And if you can do that with your coach, it gives them the ability to spot the things that you're myopic.
What do you do with the entrepreneurs that have a lot of barriers up? Because that's eventually going to prevent you from doing your job the best possible way you can. How do you get them to kind of tear down these barriers? Because that's not something you can do overnight. That's not something you can do immediately. And the barriers are easy to spot. But knowing that you can't do your job completely until they tear them down, meaning allowing you to ask the kind of questions for them to answer honestly with a good sense of self-awareness to eventually get them to unlock the idea or believe that the idea is theirs. What are some methods that you use to help them tear down those barriers?
Yeah, I love that. You nailed it when you say it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a long time for it to. First thing I recognize is a lot of these things that are walls or barriers for us are protection mechanisms that we've put into place in our lives at some point. And it could be a childhood thing, right? I could be very quiet and keep things close to the vest because I grew up in a particular environment where I got punished for it. And so you take that into your adulthood and not recognize that it's, I'm back to this point, recognize where it's from and recognize that it probably was there for a reason, but you also have to stop and recognize where it doesn't serve you anymore. And I think that is the key piece. I can help somebody go through and recognize that, yeah, I know I have a hard time trusting or confiding, or I have a hard time taking feedback or admitting I've made mistakes for it too. Both not making them feel guilty, ashamed of it, recognizing the utility and benefit it has had in your life as a protection mechanism, and then finally recognizing that in this situation at least, it doesn't serve you, and to start the process around choosing a different path. It is like moving the freaking Titanic is what it is, honestly, because all of us have such strong personalities that we've developed and that we've been proven right by our own experiences, one way or the other, by us running through life. And so I think doing it with reverence and respect, but also being really clear around that what got you here won't get you there, and we need to make these changes for it too. And if they're committed to it, that's enough. If they're not committed and they're just compliant, which are two very different things. That commitment compliant thing is something we should be talking about from employees and everything. I always look for commitment because compliance is going to be short term and it's never going to go.
All right, so Inception, Reverence, Titanic. Do you want to reference any other Leonardo DiCaprio movies? Or?
Very good, by the way. You caught them.
We'll talk about Django for a second.
That's it. I love it.
One Night in Hollywood.
Reverence, that's good.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. All right, so we spoke a little bit before about you being the right coach, about you being the right teacher. You're not only the right person for the job, thank God, in a market full of hacks, but you're also a good marketer too. So as a good marketer, I would imagine you're really good at identifying when somebody is ready for a coach and that they need a coach and that they need you. How would one recognize in themselves that when they're ready for coaching or they need entrepreneur or business coaching?
Yeah, I love that question. I've had my coach for now going on 6 years, and I couldn't imagine my life without her. I think it's fair to say when you start recognizing that your business requires good decision making is probably the time you need to start looking for a mentor, advisor, a partner, a coach who can help you with the decision making process. And I say that because early when you're really just starting, there's both the decisions of like what to call your company and how the website needs to be and like what your sales plan, those are decisions, those are real, but it's balanced by maybe well over half of just rolled up sleeves. It's going to come down to you actually making the calls, you putting out the website, and there's a lot of rolled up sleeves work. When you start seeing that, yes, you still have rolled up sleeves, but now you need to be making more decisions again, and shifting away from that is a really pivotal time, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs spend way too much time in the couple $100,000 revenue range for far longer because they don't recognize that they're keeping themselves in there by continually leaning into the job of the business and not trying to expand the whole business. And so from a coaching thing, that is where most people still need to be led to water. That is the DiCaprio Inception piece, because it's easy to tell somebody, hey, you should be spending time working on the business. Too general, not helpful. But if you instead say, hey, if you had spent 4 hours last Monday specifically looking at like your top accounts and how you can go through all of this, what would that have done? It will reframe it in such a way where it feels like that is the obvious solution for them.
So not to oversimplify it, right? But identifying a plateau inside of a business or
yeah, I think it's a good call. And there's usually a couple plateaus. Every business plateaus where, like, when you first start, you're likely to plateau with your own ability to achieve. And if you're plateauing in a couple $100,000 range with very few employees, it probably is you holding it back because you're too instrumental, or you're the bottleneck for it too. But then there's other bottlenecks when you first hire your first people and you're maybe at $1 million, but you haven't developed that your lieutenants, your leadership thing. You also plateau there. And so each one of those, I think, is a key piece of like, okay, I'm here. Where do I want to go and how do I want to get there? Mm-hmm. Even if it isn't a coach, Brian, have people who can speak into your life very clearly and that know your business and your stuff. It'll change the quality of your decision making for the better.
Yeah. That's really powerful too, because like you don't always really know where you want to go. You just know that you want to grow, or you need to have those conversations with trustworthy folks around you sometimes, just to know that you might need a little bit of outside help. You might need a little bit of coaching or something like that too.
Yeah, I think if you find yourself questioning whether or not you're doing the right thing, again, you don't have to go straight for a coach. Though I'd love to have a conversation with you and help you workshop ideas, like AlexG.consulting. By all means, hit me up. But I think it's super critical that you have other people who can check your ideas in a very real sense. Intellectually, honestly, check your ideas and you don't get defensive, I think is a super important piece.
Yeah, if you don't recognize that plateau and push forward, you're just going to become the departed.
Yes. We're going to make this a real thing. You'll quickly get departed, yeah.
But it's incredibly important, and this is also where self-awareness comes in here too, because if you're that entrepreneur that now, to your point, instead of building a business, you've built a job, and your job is consistently paying you $200,000 a year, to your point, that's not a growing business. That's a job.
Correct.
So do you want a business or do you want a job? And a business requires a coach. A job probably doesn't. Would you say
I love that too. And in fact, there's no shame in deciding to own a job. There's no shame in like being very flexible, working what you want, when you want, and earning a good income for it too. But recognize the difference between owning a job and owning a business. And that is a huge cavernous shift in what you prioritize and what you pursue. That makes the difference. And honestly, most people struggle with that shift.
Yeah. Now, we talked a lot about early stage entrepreneur coaching, tearing down the walls, eventually telling them, or planting the seed of where they need to go, them having that too. Mm-hmm. Let's say you now have a client that's in a flow state. The wall's been broken down. The idea has been realized. They are a growing business. What is the next step that you're now going to bring them to? Because now we've broken past that $1 million price point, maybe or revenue point, maybe even that $2.5 million revenue point. What ideas do you now have to start getting that entrepreneur to think about so that they can build a truly meaningful, impactful business to not only themselves now, but obviously society? Because at that $1 million, $2.5 million, you're changing your own life.
Yeah.
But a lot of us get into this to change the lives of others. So what kind of coaching do you talk about at that point?
Yeah, that's when you start shifting from like the three things I want to revisit is like growth strategy, and just getting your first couple $1 million is a key piece. Setting up operations and effective like processes is a key piece to scale a business. But this is where, when you're in the couple $1 million range, this is where that leadership development part really comes in. I used to be a recruiter. I've done well over 2,000 interviews, which is a shit ton of interviews for sitting across from somebody. And hiring the right person for the right seat and empowering them the right way is the thing that changes a company's trajectory from struggling in a couple $1 million range versus being able to actually excel. And what that means is you have to, at some point in that business transition, not be the main thing. You kind of have to now step back empower your lieutenants, your leadership team, for them to have the autonomy, for them to get the credit, for them to lead their teams for it, and you go into more servant leadership support mode for it, that is a very difficult shift to do. And your ability, you go from an entrepreneur to being a leader, and that is a whole job change that requires a lot of intensive effort.
And that's making a bigger impact on your company, which is going to have network effects on society, changing the culture inside your company to change the culture in a piece of society as well, too.
Yeah, sure.
And you mentioned it before too, and it was very lateral to entrepreneurship, as in, we have to set, like when we achieve some sort of success, we need to send the elevator back down for other entrepreneurs. Now, there's multiple ways to send that elevator back down for other people as well. We don't need to essentially always do it for entrepreneurs. Sometimes you have somebody in front of you that's really passionate about sending the elevator down to just help out another part of society.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not entrepreneurs. Maybe it's a certain cause or something else that they're passionate about. Is this a part of your coaching to when you have this successful entrepreneur that says, hey, I like what I'm doing here, and I like the mission, and I like that we're solving this SaaS problem over here, but I really I want to have a bigger purpose as a human being as a whole. And is that a part of your coaching to tell them about how they can be a bigger impact to society as well?
Gosh, I love that. And if I'm being really honest, it isn't yet a part of my coaching, but I am on that self-discovery journey too. Like we talked about that last night a little bit over drinks, and it was awesome. But what I will speak for me is I've recognized the difference between throwing yourself bodily at entrepreneurship because you are proving yourself, and it's a lack of self-esteem, and you have a chip on the shoulder, and that's really good because it's that energy, that fire burns really, really hot. But it also burn you out if that's the only thing driving you. You will come to an end of yourself, or you'll throw yourself so bodily at it that you'll let your mental health or your physical health deteriorate because you are frenetically working towards that. I found myself in that spot during my entrepreneurial journey, and I have had to shift from proving myself and striving to understanding the calling you have. And for my entrepreneurial coaching clients, yes, absolutely. I think we should all understand and recognize why we're doing it. This is a Nietzsche quote, right? He who has a strong why can get through almost any how. And be getting really clear about why you're doing it. For me, it was to change my family legacy. We grew up in Ukraine, dirt floor level poverty for it. And so when we moved to the United States, we grew up poor, but wasn't poor in the way that I understand poor. It was American poor. I set out a long time ago to change that family legacy. That is what got me here. I have now been here, and now I recognize that I need to find another something to spend the rest of, put a mission on my life for the rest of my life. And I want to do that with the coaching clients as well. It's like figure out, yes, you've covered the business. Yes, it's growing. But now what do you actually want to do? What's the dent in the universe that you want to make?
The dent in the universe. And you bring up a phrase that could almost trigger some people. And I'm going to talk about it, but when I say change society, I don't mean putting a service in society that's going to be impactful always as a business. You know what I mean? Sometimes we're blinded to the fact, like you use the phrase American poor versus the rest of the country. There's so we're so blessed in this country to have these kind of opportunities, and those that came before us made sacrifices to get away from places in the Ukraine. My wife, who would probably hate me for mentioning this, so we may even need to cut this out, was born in China, and her family brought her over here for more opportunities as well. And these are things that sometimes we're blind to, but as successful entrepreneurs, we can make a bigger impact on society, not only with our business and our services, but our missions to making sure that we can make this, maybe not fix it, but at least make it a little bit better for others.
But what I love about that too is if you have a really good why, a real purpose, and again, you're sending the elevator back down, whether it's entrepreneurs, whether it's a marginalized group for it too, by setting that mission up and being uncompromising at being mission driven for it, you will be more likely to be successful because you're more likely to recruit people who believe the same things you do, have that conviction, that purpose for it. And that is one of the big differences between a company with good employees that stay for a couple of years versus that company that we all want to build that all feels like a family because we're all marching towards a particular goal. When the mission is more important than is the most important thing, it will cover a multitude of politics and mistakes and everything else, I think it's super important to be mission oriented as an entrepreneur. I
talk about this all the time, and I catch so much shit for it from early stage entrepreneurs that are trying to hire, and I'll throw out the phrase hire mission first.
Yeah.
Hire mission first, because the thing is also, like, I take the Army approach to it, which is that the Army has one mission: America first. You know what I mean? And if you get those and these are people that literally die for their job. So these are people that believe in that mission so hard that they say, yes, I'm willing to sign up. I'm willing to risk my life because I believe in this mission. Why can't we have that same mentality with our companies? Why can't we hire people that are ready to die on the hill? And if you're not creating a culture like that, what are you creating?
All right, let me challenge you, plus one that, and challenge every one of us in our businesses. When I talk about shifting away from like working on the job and in the business to more of those things, that's one of the things that gets left out. You need to basically become a proponent for the mission. You need to proselytize it. You need to communicate it. You need to bolster everything up. And those are the hours that we very quickly cannibalize. Yeah. It is too easy to say, you know what, I won't do that. You know, like set up a town hall meeting for my 4 employees, or be very transparent with all of that too, or start talking about like the mission for it. But if you don't leave yourself the margin and extricate yourself from like the day-to-day duties, you'll never be able to galvanize a team to really pursue something meaningful.
Yeah, and it's gonna make the biggest impact on your business, just as you're saying. And you need to dedicate the time to that, research it. Go, like we talk about core values, and people put them up on their wall, and it's not meaningful if you don't embody them.
Correct.
If you don't live them, not only when you're at work, but outside of the doors of work. When you go home, when you spend time with your wife, with your husband, if you're not that person, you're not going to be that person at work. How you do one thing is how you do everything. You need to be that person at all times.
Yeah.
So what I usually get challenged with is I need to hire a salesperson. What should I look for? And they're looking for experience and how to sell people. And you and I've at length had conversations about what makes a good salesperson. When I hire a salesperson, first and foremost, they're not doing your marketing. So you need to separate them. They need to be a salesperson.
Very different.
But I hire people that put the mission first. And the two most important factors in a good salesperson are: 1, they need to put the mission first; 2, they need to believe in the mission. The second part, I'll go into a little bit of depth on how I achieve that. But 1 is they need to believe in the mission. And this happens in the interview process. This happens in the leader that's hiring them to be able to recognize if they actually put this mission first or if they're bullshitting you about that mission. And you need to be able to identify that, because the right person, and they're like, oh, but I don't have the resources and the money to hire that kind of salesperson. If they believe in the mission, they're going to do it for the amount of money that's within the budget, because they believe in the mission first. And spend time trying to find that person rather than trying to spend money trying to hire them. The second part is customer success. They need to continue to believe in the mission. My salespeople constantly talk to my customer success team or my customer service team, if you will, too. And they need to hear that after they've brought them on board, how we're actually helping other people, because that gives them the fuel to go back out into the field and to go get more people into it, because now they not only believe in the mission, but they see that the mission is working, and they will in turn feel like they have a moral obligation and a duty to bring more people into the mission that works, rather than...
Dude, I love that. And even meeting and understanding who the customer is and how it actually impacts their life makes all the difference, because there's a difference between saying, hey, the mission is to help create this many millions of dollars of economic development for entrepreneurs. That's a statistic. That's not meaningful. There's no emotion there. Yep. But to say, like, we help entrepreneurs get the publicity they deserve is a cool, catchy thing. But what that means is it's somebody doing something really meaningful, doing something really important that can really move the needle for it, and yet they're working in obscurity. When you shine a light on that and you start making that be part of the mission, yes, we all work different, because now it's tangible, it's clear. There's almost this really shitty, I hate this quote, but it's real, and it's one person dying of starvation is a tragedy. 1 million is a statistic. And it's just because, like, we can't humanize that. I think on a mission level, it's incumbent on us to humanize to the individual impact that we're making.
Yeah. On the flip side of that too, I constantly have my sales team talk to my customer success team on the good things that are happening. Mm-hmm. On the other side of that, the tragedy part, I also like to seek out examples of what entrepreneurs that are working with our competitors are doing, and how they've thrown tens of thousands of dollars into this and how they failed and how they come to us. So when they do come to us, when they come to the salespeople and they feel burnt, they're like, look, I gave 20 grand to a PR agency. They didn't get me any placements. I didn't get any results from it. I didn't get anything from it. This is what happens when you don't do your job, is that there's entrepreneurs out there on their own mission that are throwing so much money away that if you're not mission first, you're not going to be passionate enough to bring that person in and do the right thing morally. So we need to see where the tragedy is, we need to see where the success is, and you need to know that both are happening in order for you to effectively do your job.
And recognize that if you're really delivering good value, that is the value there. You're saving somebody from getting fleeced by buying whatever product or service, whatever else, and those hurt our feelings. When we hear about that and somebody throwing away so much money, like, it hurts us to the soul. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, what somebody comes to you and says, "Oh, I had a business coach in the past and I gave him 20 grand and here I am." You know what I mean? Like,
I've had that, and like that's the sucky part. To your point, like there's so many shitty coaches, and most of if I had a diagnosis, because you don't have to have any previous experience to become a coach. You can just get a certification, and I'm pursuing one. But the difference is I came from entrepreneurship. I've had my failures, I've had my access, and then I became a coach. The other coaches who have no actual experience, who just have a coaching certification, yeah, they can do a lot of damage. They're put in a position of heavy influence, but they may not they may be speaking out of turn, which is incredibly damaging for the right.
I'm going to use it as an example too, because you're talking about certifications and people that are out there that are like, I have so much business, I have certifications, and this is who I am, but they're not transparent about it. And I'm going to use the movie Dumb Money as an example, and the GameStop and Roaring Kitty, right, and all that. So he wasn't this big financial advisor, right? He didn't work for a huge mega firm or anything. He was just transparent about what he's doing. He's like, hey, I like this. Here's why I like it. By the way, here's my balance sheet every single day. I'm going to show you my balance sheet. And when his balance sheet got up to, and he was making millions and millions of dollars, it started to get more people, more attention. You're very transparent about what you do. You're very transparent about the successes you've had. You're very transparent about the failures that you've had too. And I believe that's more powerful when you're looking for a business coach than seeing that they work for some high name company or something like that, or that they that they have some well-known certification. That doesn't mean shit. Be transparent about the results that you've gotten for yourself and other people, and that'll show me that it's going to be impactful for me as well.
Yeah, I love that. Hence, like, when you asked me earlier on, like, do you coach other people with like their mission in life for it? Yeah. I can't yet. I'd like to, but I'm on that journey too, man.
All right, so we spoke a little bit about why I believe you're the best coach for the job. I personally believe that because I've gotten the chance to know you. I think that you're gonna bring a whole new dynamic to entrepreneurs that need this level of coaching. I personally believe you'd be the best one for it, and I know soon your calendar is gonna be filled up with that too. But just for the people that are watching, why don't you give kind of a backstory to what made you a successful entrepreneur, and then why that puts you in the best position to be a coach for them?
Yeah, I think that's one, you teed it up perfectly. What makes me a really good coach is I don't just have a certification or education and I'm talking to you about your mindset or lifestyle. Like, I've freaking lived it. I started my first company in 2013. It was an HR technology company, so it was a SaaS, software as a service for it too. And over the next year and a half, we sunk in $70,000 and poured in 3 full-time co-founders that barely paid ourselves, and like, we failed it. And it was brutal. And we went from there, decided to raise a round for this next company. So actually, it's worth diving into this one. So the first company failed pretty quickly after about a year and a half. It's because we built a marketplace. It was basically like a job platform that needed candidates and employers, and we were super naive to how much money it took to build a marketplace. And so, Mount Stupid, that was it. We launched, we didn't realize, and then when we were in our valley of despair, our pivot was, okay, we're told that, yeah, you don't have enough candidates, there's not enough resumes in your database, but we really like this part of your platform. That became the basis of a whole second company that did actually pretty well. We got like Uber, Lyft, Walmart. We got some huge marquee names on our platform, but the problem with that one is we had a leaky bucket. We weren't able to keep them over time. And so that was about a 2.5-year period. So the first 4 years of my entrepreneurial journey was filled with just failure after failure. And over that time, I've lost over $200,000 of my money, friends and family money, and was on welfare and food stamps. Like, I went through the shit for it as well. And the third company is the one that we pivoted into. That one did about $500,000 in its first 6 months. And within the first year, we got an acquisition offer. And to be frank, we had just been living off of like credit cards and whatever meager things we could do for it. So when they sent us an acquisition offer, like we straight up took it. That led us into a fourth business that I ran as a CEO. That was a 50-person organization. It was doing about $6.5 million in revenue, but it was losing 6 figures a month. That one was basically a turnaround job where over the next 2 years, I spent streamlining the processes, replacing employees, rebuilding the culture, selling legacy platforms, completely revitalizing the entire company over 2 years. It was one of the most brutal 2-year periods of my life, and we've touched on that. And all of that background was with no education, no network, no silver spoon, no, I'm an immigrant with no background network for it too, and I did all of that through that. And so I think I'm in a unique situation in that I've both done almost every single job across like many of my startups for it too, but I also have had the real failure and struggle to recognize like when you're at the end of your rope, what burnout really looks like when you're in a really dark place. And honestly, in 2019, I met a business coach and I started working with her, and I thought she was going to help me build my business, this turnaround job, and really help me be a more effective CEO. But she probably saved my life because I was in such a dark place. She spoke to me, the human, and showed me like what a real coaching relationship can do. And so I went from unhealthy habits, drinking tons of alcohol, not exercising, basically throwing myself with reckless abandon in my company, and still feeling like I was failing, to turning that completely around. My lifestyle feels like a storybook. I work a lot less. I spend a lot of time with family. I'm in a really good place right now. And all of that is due to me recognizing the mindset shifts that I had to make along the way and somebody partnering with me.
Yeah, a lot of the things that you've done are things that you're now recognizing in the entrepreneurs that you're coaching, and you're able to identify them because you've seen them through experience, rather than saying, I'm going to start up a coaching business because I want to be a coach. You were an entrepreneur and you lived that first before you started coaching other people on how to do it, and you did it successfully too. So talk about some of your successes too. But before you do, I want to point out one thing that you said too, which is you had a coach since 2019, and you're a coach yourself. And this is something I tell people all the time too when they're seeking out a business coach. Sometimes they'll come to me for advice, and I'll say, look, when you're vetting a coach for yourself and you're looking for a coach without a coach is a liar. So ask your business coach.
That's really good.
So ask your soon-to-be business coach if they have a coach and what they value most about their coach, as you're vetting a coach for yourself too. If your coach tells you that they don't have a coach, then they're just fucking full of shit, and they should immediately be taken out of contention.
That's fair, actually, and I love that you went there over there too. But no, like literally, the coaching was never my intent. It's because I developed such an appreciation and I saw it and its impact in my unique life for it, that it just lit me on fire. And again, touching on the blocks put us in a situation where we get to speak life into other people's businesses for it too. And it is a incredibly compelling and addictive feeling to help entrepreneurs get past the challenges, the barriers, the trials, and the tribulations that they face, and come on the other side of that. Like, it feels like you're helping a younger version of yourself when you were through all of that, and that's just, it's addicting.
Talk about some of the successes that you had after you got your teeth kicked in for a little bit. You know, we got this $500,000 business. There's an acquisition. Talk about some of the other things you did after that eventually led to where you are today, because you did some other successful things after that also.
Yeah. So good call. Basically, like from, I'd say the first 2 back-to-back failures, 4.5 years of my entrepreneurial journey, it taught me a lot. Those failures, I think, really, we talked about this too earlier, it humbled me. I was arrogant. I thought I knew. I was very quick to discount anybody who disagreed with me for it. And I think that was my crucible of humility, that I got humbled for it. But that also it gave me a perception. So I want to talk about mindset. I became a very optimistic, paranoid person. And the optimism is like, hey, I can get through whatever we can because we've just been through some really hard shit and we can overcome it. But the paranoia was new. That allowed me to recognize and look for disconfirming evidence and to find things that disagreed with me. And so walking into the third and fourth business we walked in there not with our idea that we believed we had the solution for it, but we started very much from the customer side of like what is necessary, what are their deep problems, and I love it. There's a great quote, I think it's attributed to Albert Einstein, but he said, if I had 20 days to to come up with the solution, I'd spend the first 19 days understanding the problem.
Yeah.
And like really diagnosing and figuring that out of where that stance is, I think is a key piece of that. So for that gave me deep awareness with these next couple of companies of who the customer is, what they really want, and not me selling them, but what they need as far as like for their business or themselves. Changed my entire paradigm. It seems subtle, but dude, you know this, you're in PR. Walk me through, in your mind, how somebody who says, hey, I want to sell and like push a product, how that's different from somebody who's really customer focused and understands the problem and is able to like solve that problem.
Somebody who wants to push a product, if they have a product, I usually ask them about their market, obviously, too. And that tells me how well they understand their market by how well they understand the problem. And we dive really deep into that, too, because when we're talking about PR, we need to be talking about copy is so important in PR and the stories that we get. So, you know, I use this example a lot for people. If you're a travel agent, right, you have to sell the solution. You can't sell the thing. So if you're a travel agent, you sell the idea and you sell the result. You sell the concept or the idea of you sitting on a beach in Hawaii with a blue drink in your hand. You don't say, hey, look, I got the cheapest flight. I got the cheapest way for you to get in a line in a very crowded area and to go sit on an airplane, which is also very crowded, but it's the cheapest one. You don't talk about that shit. You talk about the understanding, and the understanding is what do your customers really want, and then how do you talk about that? Everything else in between is just kind of semantics. It's how it works.
I think I spent my first like 5 years in entrepreneurship learning that lesson, because I would talk at people and wonder why they didn't buy, but that is because I didn't quite understand what sways and influences people. And so leading into that third company, into the fourth company, the thing that changed is that understanding. And the successes came when I started in this company, that $6.5 million revenue company. That one was new because I had 50 employees. That was the biggest company I had run up until that point. But it was the culture was horrible. The processes were non-existent. Like everything was like technology was really rough, and so I spent all that time overhauling it. But one of the things that I'd say was the most successful is I focused first, because this is now like a $6.5 million company. I focused first on the people, empowering them, and make sure that they understood the mission for it too. And it didn't feel like it was really hard. Don't get me wrong, but it didn't feel like I was doing all of it myself as much as I was trying to set the people in the right places and move the shit out of the way for them to be able to accomplish what they needed.
You got to take the roadblocks out of the way, and that comes to the concept of people, process, culture. Right?
Yeah.
So when you're building a business and you're coaching somebody on building a business, not building a job, the people that they have around them is going to be so important and so critical to building that business. The processes that they take, that the people take in order to do so, and you being able to remove the roadblocks from those processes to allow them to do their job is what's going to create the culture, which is ultimately going to springboard your company.
Do you think, people talk about that culture word, do you think culture is a benefit for the employees, or why do you think we should focus on like a really good culture for a company?
The culture, so culture goes hand in hand with the mission. The right culture will facilitate the mission. So when we hire people for mission, we want to make sure that they fit into the culture very well. One of the things that we do at ClearCut PR is, the employees that we hire, the contractors that we hire, part of your compensation is a base, and then another part of your compensation is how well does the company do, and then another part of your compensation is you set it yourself. Meaning, and you and I spoke about this, you set basically a portion of your salary, and you set you literally set the number. You say, I get $1 million if I fill in the blank. But that's not just between you and me. That's between you, me, and the rest of the company. Meaning, if you said, I get $1 million if I sign 5 clients, the rest of the company now has to see that. And if it's bullshit, which it is by saying that, unless those 5 clients are all AT&T, but if it's bullshit, the rest of the company is going to be like, what the fuck are you doing? You don't belong here. And they will push you out. And I've created that culture, which is mission first, to be able to create the right people in here. So you not only have to look inside yourself, you have to align your compensation with the mission of the company, and you need to tell all of your peers how you're actually deciding a portion of your compensation, who will then ridicule you if it's bullshit, or they'll be like, hey, I think that's a good goal, I'm going to help you achieve it.
I love that you're doing that intentionally. So I believe there's a book called The Advantage by a guy named Patrick Lencioni. He's the one who wrote 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, The 5 Temptations of CEO, and it's an amazing short book. It talks about how we have eked out all the efficiencies with Lean Six Sigma. A startup today that you start like at your kitchen table, you have the similar access to tools and technologies and platforms as a Fortune 500 company. You have similar access to all the knowledge and data for it too. And so like, it's almost this even playing field. And the book talks about the last big advantage from one company to the other is gonna be in the culture of how you align and galvanize a team towards a mission for it. That is gonna be a big difference. And it's also one of the hardest things because culture is nebulous. But culture, to your point, is a tool that could be a competitive advantage if done right. Tools are like CRMs and hammers and all that, but also management is a tool. And the type of management structure you set up and the type of culture you put in place is a tool to help you accelerate that. And I think that's a huge.
And that culture is not only going to be formed, but it's going to be enforced by the leadership within the company, which is you, the entrepreneur.
In fact, I'd even say enforced, yes, but like all companies are top-down phenomena. It isn't just enforced. It'll naturally be how you live out and work. It'll be a natural outpouring of like who you are. And that is why you have all these people who have core values on posters that mean shit, that aren't real. It's because the person at the top or the leadership don't actually live it. And so no amount of posters or Friday Hawaiian shirt days are going to make up for that.
Culture for us and core values for us are they're fireable acts. Meaning,
I love that.
You have to. So we have our core values down on paper, and when you come on as a contractor or when you come on as an employee, you need to review those core values, and you sign off on something that says if you compromise any of these, there is no place for you here, and you will be fired or terminated.
You know what I love about that is if you choose your core values really, really well. You will naturally, like you said, expel or reject the ones that don't fit. And those are really good. There's a book called What You Do Is Who You Are by Ben Horowitz. And he has an example in there, a story, where he talks about a top salesperson who was just a rainmaker. Customers had these little complaints. The team internally had these little complaints because he wasn't a team player. He's kind of a jerk. The customer's like, well, he kind of like does this stuff over here too. But he was such a rainmaker that the company was like, we can't afford to leave him. But they called themselves out on their own bullshit and said, wait a second, we said that core values are so important that we need to like have a handle on this. And so what it was is there were these tiny little dishonesties. He would like fudge a couple things here and there, but it was still in the, he was still very productive. Well, they ended up firing him. And they let him go anyway. You know what happened? People came out of the woodwork and said, man, I'm so happy. It made me uncomfortable. And every single time he was here employed, it felt like you were choosing productivity over integrity. And by firing that person, they had clients come out and say, man, that was a relief. Honestly, it made us uncomfortable because he did all this. And they wouldn't have done it if they hadn't stuck to their core values and if they had compromised that on like based on profit alone.
They compromised themselves. That was poor leadership and waiting so long to do that.
I agree with that. I agree.
Because, a lot of times we make the mistake of thinking that the money is the result, and the money's not the result. The mission is the result. And a really good book for this is actually Leading with Heart by Coach K, the Duke basketball coach. And he obviously won a ton of championships, and their goal was never to win a championship. Their goal was to be the best defensive team in the league.
Wow.
And if they can be the best defensive team in the league, then that obviously led to a lot of championships. So if you can set your mission to be something higher than revenue and money, the revenue will come along the way.
I love that. Can I throw one thing out here? There's a term that I heard recently that it made me bristle, and that is non-regrettable attrition. what I understand that to mean is like when somebody leaves and you're like, oh, I don't care. Like it's good that they left for it too.
Yeah.
You mentioned that it was really bad leadership of them not firing right away. How do you feel about non-regrettable attrition? Is that when somebody leaves and you're like, okay, I'm glad that they left, was that a indictment on your leadership?
Yeah, I need to look internally and say, well, if that is the result of them leaving, what did I do? There was a perfect time. You ever watch Breaking Bad?
Still love Breaking Bad, yeah.
So in Breaking Bad, he says there was a perfect time to leave this, because like at some point he was in too deep, and now he's got to run this gigantic meth organization. He goes, at some point there was a perfect time to leave this. So when something like that happens, I go, okay, so if everybody's happy about this, then at some point there was a perfect time to let this person go, and it wasn't what I did.
Miss it? Yeah.
Where did I miss it? How can I learn? How can I be better at seeing those red flags in the future? Because I'm still it's gonna happen as leadership. We're still gonna hire the wrong people sometimes. It's a constant evolving process, and you're gonna be in it. So to get better at it as a leader and identify the red flags is something that we need to still constantly learn as leaders.
I 100% agree. And being able, again, to be introspective and intellectually honest with yourself, to recognize like, shoot, okay, honestly, the call, one, they left anyway, which is also kind of this whole thing, and then they leave on their terms and not your own. But two, if you can go upstream and recognize, shoot, I should have made that call then. And clearly, most of the time it isn't a surprise, them leaving, and you could have done it earlier and probably spared everybody else along the way.
Speaking a little bit of culture, I want to transition a little bit into this. All right, so you and I have had some conversations about AI. I'm just beginning to scratch the surface on it, and I want to make sure that I'm using it responsibly too. What kind of advice would you give to entrepreneurs using AI to make sure that they're, one, using it responsibly, two, using it meaningfully, and where is the middle ground where those two come together?
Gosh, that's so good, because what you touched on is super important, using it responsibly. I think, the Mount Stupid, the Dunning-Kruger effect, same thing with AI. People jump into it, they're like, oh shoot, wait a second, I can have it create all this copy for me. I can have it create email newsletters. I have it create website copy. And you know where I'm going with this. Yeah. It's all trash. Yeah. It sounds terrible. It's generic content, doesn't do anything for it. So I think there's a lot of risks with using AI irresponsibly for it. And we've talked about this, Wes Bergman at The Blocks has almost this hesitation with teaching about AI because you can use it so poorly. But I candidly feel like if you're an entrepreneur right now, and doesn't matter almost what business you're in, you need to be leaning into AI and using it, because it is the thing that has already changed our world. The world hasn't caught up yet. Yeah. And it's going to completely change how we live and work. A quick comparison is over the course of 1912 to 2012, 100 years, our 100-meter dash run went from 6.58 seconds to it was something like 5.98 seconds. We shaved basically 10% off, a little over half a second in that time. Pole vaulting in that same 100-year period went from 4 meters to 6.18 meters during that exact same time. And it wasn't because humans had better shoulder muscles. It's because the bamboo to basically the pole changed from bamboo to other structures for it. And so the tools allowed us to go a lot further. AI is no different. This is a tool that will allow us to change how we work and how much we can put out at any given time. Mm-hmm. But let me ask you then real quick. With your AI stuff, the obvious one is just to create content for it, but have you been able to develop things that help you do that really well, that give you the benefit without sounding like AI?
So in PR, the end result content is exactly what you said. If we used AI to generate that, one, it's trash. People know that they're reading an AI article. Mm-hmm. Two, Google's gotten hip to it. So what it's doing is, if you want to get really nerdy about it, Google assigns domain authority scores to news websites based on how much AI content versus how much original content they have.
I didn't know that.
And for us, because we get nerdy about our PR, we want our backlinks on higher domain authority. So I have to be working with those types of publishers. So we don't use AI in any sense really on that aspect. Where we use AI the most, and this is why I'm saying we're only scratching the surface, is that when we sign on a client, they basically info dump on us everything about their business. Because they need to give us all the meaningful points on how we can pitch them to editors and publishers in order to get published. When we pitch them, the first thing that we do when we pitch the publishers is we give them a 1-page about the client. So I got to take your 40-page info dump and put it into a 1-page concise form to keep the conversation going for the publisher. That's where we use
That's a really good use for AI.
We condense it. We ask it to point out the most meaningful points that have gotten the most traction. We allow it to put it in a tonality where the publisher can quickly read it and glance at it in one page and say, yes, I want to know more. This provokes questions for me, and things of that nature. The end result of content, AI is, I don't want to say it's nowhere near it, because what's going to happen is, like, the article will get written and then things will be grammatically enhanced with AI a little bit, but they're not being generated through AI. That's how we're using it.
I love that. So I do use AI to create content, but it isn't a one-shot content. I don't say, hey, develop a blog post for it too. I broke out this whole steps because I found that, again, with the Dunning-Kruger, if you just say, hey, write me a blog post about X, it's going to be trash. Instead, what I say is, hey, generate me a lot of ideas around this subject with these maybe keywords that I'm targeting for too, and it'll generate ideas for it. I then take that and say, generate an outline of a post, and it gives me the ability to edit and tweak the outline and make sure that it isn't just generic information, but I can put my own opinion and philosophies and make it real. And then I take that outline and say, great, now build the entire thing targeting these keywords for this audience, and here's how I want you to write it. And I found that that gives me, I don't think even then it's 100%, it's probably closer to like 70%, but it is far closer because you basically led it to that process instead of letting it kind of guess and fill in all those pieces for it. But like, that is an area that I do feel like entrepreneurs should be using it with GPT, like OpenAI's ChatGPT. You can create a ghostwriter and give it samples, your writing samples, and get it closer to writing just like you.
Yeah.
And even though like there's still risks, I want to reinforce again, like, I think every entrepreneur should be using AI now, because it's going to be a distinguishing multiplier between somebody who is a baker who uses AI and owns a bakery versus a bakery who doesn't.
Yes.
And you'll see that with all the different jobs that you need to do when you run any company.
For sure. I'm going to get granular and simple in the same sense. So I'm just gonna guide you down a path of questions here. So in your business, give me a common denominator industry so like, of your clients, what's one industry that you see that several of your clients are in?
Pet industry.
Pet industry. Give me an example of an irresponsible way to use AI in the pet industry.
All right. One just came up recently. So we have a virtual assistant that's helping this client for it too. And so the irresponsible use is like, hey, here's a training tool. Let's write posts about dog ownership and let's let it fill in all these things. We did that first, but the first things it was saying is, hey, take your dog to a dog park. Here's all of this stuff. Apparently that's that is a controversial topic for it too. And if we had just let AI run it and fill in the article, like, it basically lacks the company's authority, their stance, their position on everything else too. And it would have made for just a really crappy article. There are AI websites right now and AI platforms that write full articles with you, and you can put in what your authority is that you're wanting to do and the keywords that can do some of that, but it's trash. It's content that doesn't have an opinion, it doesn't have a spirit, it doesn't it's going to check off the boxes, but to your point, like, Google and every search engine is being really wise to this now.
So same industry, different example. But what would an example of responsible way of using AI in the pet industry be? And it doesn't have to be for content; it could be for anything else.
Like, I'll say this: let's get away from generating content for a little bit. One of the other two ways I'd say like people should be using AI is there's AI meeting note takers, and you've seen those now. I think if you're on Zoom or Google Meet for it too, those are incredible for two reasons. One, yes, they record the entire call, they will transcribe the call, and they give you meeting summary for it. That's valuable itself. But the thing that blows my mind in these is it allows me to go through this transcript and not just go and re-listen to it, but I can interrogate it. I can ask my meeting AI saying, hey, walk me through where the opportunities are here, or walk me through all the action items and put all that. And it not only allows me more retention about the most important things, but it also allows me to go back and like re-reference past videos or meetings I've had and very quickly arrive to the right answer without skimming through all of it. Like, those are things that we should all be using. It's crazy.
So could somebody take AI, in this example in the pet industry and record a dog training session for you to then use it and go back and start identifying all the key points that you're talking about?
Gosh, that's so good. In fact, that's one of the pieces of advice for this exact client that I talked to you about. They're building SOPs, and my advice to them was, okay, the next time you're hiring a new employee and you're doing that onboarding, record all of it, transcribe all of it, and feed it through GPT and say, hey, I want to create an SOP that's a new hire orientation about this. Take all those elements and create the framework for it. Like, that is where AI excels at. Just the same thing with you. You have condensed 40 pages or 4 pages down to a single, like AI excels at that. And so taking this long transcript that maybe over 30 minutes or an hour, you were training an employee or onboarding a customer and just feeding that through AI and saying, hey, pull out the parts that are replicable that I can create an SOP out of this is pretty great.
So I talk about this a lot, the SOP part. So using AI, this is going to trigger other things, right? So using AI during an interview to then record and then generate an SOP, which we can now use to automate, because now what you can do is, instead of having a one-on-one interview, you can now have those questions recorded, and you can send out one-way interviews so that you can get multiple people, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them, doing a one-way interview almost as like a video recording before you actually bring them in for the one and final interview. Because now, as we spoke about before, to come full circle, now you're using your time as an entrepreneur, which is your resource, in order to allocate efficiently and properly, and you're using AI to be able to do that, so that we can automate it. This way you don't need to use all of your time to go down this road in this process.
So plus one that, 100%.
So you currently live in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You, your business is there, your family's there, and everything now too. What a lot of people don't know, and I've just come to realize, because I've fallen in love with Tulsa, because I didn't realize that this amazing entrepreneurship culture was actually out there. Can you talk a little bit about the entrepreneurship culture in Tulsa? Are there industries specific over there, or is it really just a community of a lot of different types of entrepreneurs, and a really good place for an entrepreneur to visit and see the culture that's happening as it's expanding over there?
Yeah, I love that. Like, over the last 10 years, Tulsa has changed so much, and I was at a very, very, very early part of that entrepreneur journey. And I think in Tulsa, Oklahoma, we have a benefit of having George Kaiser Family Foundation. It's this very philanthropic group that heavily invests into the community. And so they invested and supported a couple co-working facilities that kind of became the central point for it. But to be honest, I think it was, that was part of it. But I think it was also that entrepreneurs, when they find other entrepreneurs, at least where we did a little group, we found other entrepreneurs and we created our own cohesive little thing that we met. That was a key piece of that. And those same entrepreneurs that we met now, this is 8 years ago, all run different multi-million-dollar companies, and now they're investing and they're pouring back into the community. Like, it is really cool to see, and it takes a few people, I think, to blaze that trail to then send the elevator back down and like help the whole community.
Yeah, and you guys have all grown together, and you're doing more for society by allowing your businesses to grow. And I love how, you know, it could be as big as doing something meaningful and impactful, or it could be as fun as starting a website that our friend started called TulsaFucks.com. So I love it, because like I got to know this entrepreneurship community, and I'm like, wow, Tulsa Fucks. It's TulsaFux.com, and now he's selling like all this gear around just like this cool like culture happening over there, and I'm like yeah, I'm definitely gonna go buy that, because Tulsa Fucks.
Yeah, it does, man. But dude, I think the Silicon Valley was the first for it too, but like COVID sucked for a lot of reasons, but one of the best parts is the remote work. People started realizing work isn't a place you go, it's something that you do, and that also means that you can do entrepreneurship from anywhere. The community helps, but I think what you're seeing now in Tulsa is a lot of people having more license to just go and do, because like people are working remotely now anyway. Everybody has a side hustle. The reason why that's particularly important is there was an old traditional way to do business as the old guard, and that is like you create your business plan, you raise money, you hire employees, you get your office space, you have your logo, you have your business cards for it too, but really you're front loading and floating it with short-term capital, but there's nothing really there. There's no business, right? You're not developing for it. And I think that has changed demonstrably over the last like 30 years, where opening up a business isn't the mechanics of it anymore. It is all about just finding the right problem, solving that in a meaningful way and doing that in a sustainable way that you can build like a solvent company out of, that I think has been a huge shift for people, because it isn't about the perceptions of what a quote unquote business person should do. It's just whatever it freaking takes to hustle, get there, deliver.
Yeah. It's I ask this question a lot when we're vetting entrepreneurs. A lot of times I'm looking to invest in a company, and usually when that's the case, I'm really looking to vet the founder to see if they have quit in them. But one of my questions that I always ask is tell me where you're at in your business. And really the most common answer I get, which is like a huge red flag to me, is they go, oh, I opened up my business bank account, I got my logo, I got my EIN. What I'm really looking for is, how well do you really, like, if I ask you where are you at in your business, I want you to transition that into, I understand the problem so well that I'm formulating X amount of solutions to go out there to build, measure, and learn.
Yep.
I don't want to hear about your website. I don't want to hear about your bank account. I don't want to hear about, you know, the logo that you've been working on. I want to hear about, when I say where you're at in your business, is how far along have you gotten so far to understand the problem, to signal to you that you have the best solution.
Dude, that is so right. And if I can use my example, so I launched this coaching business in March, basically mid-March. I'm now a serial entrepreneur. I practice what I preach. I literally got my first customer and a check before I'd even opened up a bank account. I had a check in my hand for $15,000 I couldn't even cash for it too. And same with everything else. Like I had in my coaching side, it was a lot of things that I had to do that I just ignored, and it went right for the value, get the consults, get the clients, and this is no bullshit. Like, to show you the numbers, and we've talked about this too. Like in the first 40 days of me launching my coaching business, I've gotten over 6 figures of business just right away, and that was because I skipped the shit. I didn't worry about the EIN and all of that stuff. And not that there isn't utility there, but that isn't the main thing. Having a good EIN or insurance or payroll is not going to make you a successful business. So you put all of that at the end, and you just worry about delivering that value. Like that is
the high value things. I'm going to flip your own process on you here for a second, right? Okay. So I want to know what makes you the best coach out there right now. So if I took some of your clients your 3 to 5 clients that are delighted with you, and I was to ask them what makes Alex G the best coach, what would they say?
Gosh, that's such a good question. I think what they would say is that I've told you this. I'm allergic to bullshit too, which is, I don't want to talk academically. I don't want to talk pie in the sky. I want to talk super practically about the most important thing. And so what ends up happening oftentimes is a question that is brought up to discuss is not the most important question. And the first thing we do is say, hey, is this really the most important thing we should be talking about? Mm-hmm. And oftentimes it isn't. And so I shift to make sure that whatever coaching session that I have with any of my clients, it's to move the needle in some very real way that we can measure. And sometimes that's a mindset thing, but you should be able to measure it in the ability of some output or deliverable.
I like how you stay true to your process, because you said earlier that you get people to answer the question or to come to the conclusion with their own thought. Mm-hmm. So even on calling them out on bullshit, which the Jersey way to call somebody out on bullshit is to say you're fucking full of shit.
Yeah, it's bullshit.
And to just say that. But in order to get them to see that they're full of shit, you ask them the question, is this really the most important thing happening in your business that you want to talk about right now? Which is a great approach, because they'll answer that with likely they'll be like, no, it's probably not, or it'll at least force them to think about what the most important thing is, and say that maybe the thing they brought surface level wise wasn't the most important thing. And that's a good way to also tear down that wall, because maybe a lot of times people fill answers with what they think you want to hear, or what they think is the most smartest thing to say, rather than what's going to be the most genuine and get them the most results. So to ask them if this is the most important thing for them to focus on in their business is a great way to do that, tear down that wall, and to get them to conceptualize what's the biggest hurdle they need to overcome as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, what's wild is like we think out loud. We think as we talk. Yeah. It isn't that we think and then talk. We literally start talking and then we start realizing. And even asking and giving these checks around like, hey, is this the most important thing? How has this been working for you so far? Those kinds of questions, it forces you to speak out loud the almost unchecked thoughts that you've had. And that is where most people stop and are like, wait a second, now that I have to defend this, no, this probably isn't the most important for it too, and we can focus on it. And so, yeah, I think even with the blocks, any conversation I have with any entrepreneur, the goal is get meaningful, get actionable, get pragmatic.
Yeah. Yeah, pragmatism, ruthless pragmatism is
pragmatism.
that has been a key component to my success. How about you? What's the single, like, you've had a long journey of failures, successes, sending the elevator down for other entrepreneurs and doing a lot of things. What's the single best decision you made along your entrepreneurship journey, that as you look back, you can say, this one decision I made is why I'm here today?
That's a freaking awesome question. I had in 2013, which is when I first started it, another entrepreneur emailed me and said, hey, you're an entrepreneur, I'm an entrepreneur, we've met each other once at a networking event, we should get some entrepreneurs together and just get a group of us. We'll just drink beer and whatever. And so 7-8 years ago, I mentioned just a bit ago, 7-8 years ago, we formed a group that we called the Founders. It was 5 companies, 4 of us stuck it out, the one just moved, but the 4 companies that stuck it out have now been together for 8 years. All of us have either sold companies or in multi-million dollars. All of us are doing our own investments for it too. And I don't think that we got so lucky that we happened to get 4 incredible, entrepreneurial companies into one, and all of us happen to make it. It is obvious that it's through the support and through the accountability and through the pushing each other that made the difference. And to be frank, when I had failed that second business and I was at the end of my rope, it was this group that I went to that I was like, hey, I'm out. I'm down and out. I don't know what to do. They were the ones who connected us to our very first customer for that third one and gave us the start that we needed, that sent us into the first acquisition to the second acquisition. And so finding your tribe, or creating your tribe and getting real, getting transparent, not posturing, not politicking. You're not doing yourself any freaking favors if you sit with a group of entrepreneurs and all you do is ego chow and banter and posture for it. Get real, get bare, and recognize that there's some real growth potential.
Yeah, there's some serious value in that. I couldn't have said it better myself too. For me, I realized that just because of the person I am, I was very unfocused at one point. So you know what I mean. The early stage entrepreneur, we use the word pivot almost like it's a good thing, but sometimes it's good and it has a time and a place. But I think we use it too much, and we use it too liberally, or liberal. We use that word too liberal, if you would. For me, when I started earlier on, I wanted multiple revenue streams coming in. I wanted multiple price points, and I wanted to be everything to everyone. And that was a mistake for me. Once I realized that, I got focused on, and I started to, like we spoke about before, once I understood the problem, and I understood the best solution for that problem, I only focused on selling that solution and nothing else. And I didn't work in other solutions and other revenue streams until I perfected that one. There was so much of the market available to solve that one problem that instead of trying to be everything to everyone, I was like, let me be the best solution for this problem. And then when I have the majority of that market, then I will use that leverage to tell them why I'm the best solution for this other problem that they can pay me for, which is similar to it. But that focus and that determination and that willingness to die on the hill, to be the best person to solve that one problem, kept me ultra laser focused on that. Let me kind of make my bones as an entrepreneur, and then wound up providing better resources and a better compass into how I can expand and become a better entrepreneur.
So let me poke at that real quick. So I think every entrepreneur intellectually understands that focus is good and that focusing on a few things will provide much more. And all of us, I think, at some point understand that if you sell to everybody, you sell to no one. However, entrepreneurs still struggle with niching down and choosing a specialty and that focus for it too, because they feel like it's almost going to say no to all these other opportunities. And so there's a strategic aspect of choosing what to focus on, but there's the mindset aspect of it. How did you get to the mindset of it?
So the mindset was kind of what we talked about before, and it became a runway thing for me. Most entrepreneurs, even if they do have the good sense to say, I am going to focus on this one problem, I am going to focus on this one solution, and I'm going to do that for the next 6 months. And if that doesn't pay off, I'm then going to pivot. I didn't say that. I said, I'm going to focus on this one problem and this one solution for as long as it takes for me to break through to this market, and for as long as it takes for me to be meaningful in this market. And if I fail, then I fail, and the whole thing folds, and I'm going to die on this hill. But I'm going to give it absolutely everything I have to be meaningful, to solve this one problem. And those are the sacrifices I made. That's when I moved in my brother's basement, and I did that. And I said, I'm going to give this everything it absolutely takes, and it's either going to cause a nervous breakdown for me, or I'm going to be wildly successful.
Do you still? That's a burn the boats mentality. Do you still have that mentality?
When I go into something, when I start something, and we call this like a proof of concept and an MVP. I go into it with that mentality now. This way that I get ultra focused on that.
That's good.
So I can do it before I expand into other things. And I did it today with ClearCut. ClearCut today offers really only 2 different products, but we only offered one until I saturated the market well enough on one of those products to say that, okay, maybe I can use this in order to leverage it and be meaningful to another side of the market as well too.
Love that. I love that.
I want to talk a little bit about ambivert. Am I saying that right?
Ambivert? Yeah, we played with this. Yeah.
And how that applies in entrepreneurship. And I think that self-awareness is key here. So you have introverts and you have extroverts. And then you have ambiverts, which they may be chameleons, if some people call them, and they may look like an extrovert, but really they are an introvert who just has a battery life that is being spent on being an extrovert. What's your? I'll talk about my experience too. But what's your experience with this? Where do you think you fall on this? Are you introvert, extrovert, or ambivert, and why?
Yeah, there's a Myers-Briggs personality index with the 16 indicators. I'm an ENTJ, not to get into it, but E is that extroverted versus I, the introverted part. Yeah. I'm generally like 56 or 60% extroverted versus 40% introvert. So I am actually on that line, and yeah, what that means is, we can fool everybody, we can play the part, we can do the speaking for it, but at the end of that, you just feel drained and you feel like you need to go. For me, I want to go home, Netflix and chill. I don't want anybody to talk to me at the end of it, which is sometimes a problem because I come home low energy to my family. But that introspection really is important. And that also means that you got to be really clear about not only what you're good at, but also what drains energy from you versus what gives you energy. And it doesn't mean that you can, create and develop a job that never takes energy. That's not the deal, but you should have a balance, and you should check yourself if you're really good at something, but it drains you or depletes you. You should take some strong considerations to find somebody else to do that job for you. For sure. What about you?
So I'm 100% an introvert, right? And I'll go to extremes here.
So you're not an ambivert?
No, I mean,
you fool people.
I'm an ambivert, but like when I need to be, I guess, or I'm an extrovert but I'm an introvert in my core. And the only time that I may identify as an ambivert is when I know that energy level needs to be up. When I know that I'm nurturing relationships, when I know that I'm getting to know somebody, and I know I need to put this energy in. But there's a battery there, and if you imagine that battery draining and draining and draining, and then like once I get drained, I basically Irish exit out of whatever situation I'm in, and I'm gone. And it's weird because it's like, yeah, Brian was here and he was talking to everybody, and then he just left. And I noticed, but I have to do that now because I noticed what happened when I didn't just Irish exit and I didn't notice that my battery was empty, is that I would let adrenaline take over and I would keep going and I would keep pushing and I would keep doing it anyway. And then it's not like I go home and I could just at the end of a day after I drain my battery, I go home, I spend time with my wife, I put my head in her lap and she consoles me and my energy level starts coming back up. If I don't do that, and if I push when my battery is drained, then I just keep on pushing and pushing and pushing, and I still do this from time to time just because I need to. I'm in those situations. This is when I find myself in the shower crying because I'm totally drained, and at this point I don't have any energy, and even the thought of work at this point brings out such an emotional reaction in me that I'm like, I don't have it. I have no energy, and I'm just that person that's going to be like, I can't continue. I can't, because now I don't have any energy in my battery, and I'm thinking. And thinking about it alone will set me off and just cause total burnout. So
I think what you're describing is burnout. Exactly, is that burnout. And I think there's a cost. You got to be very introspective, very mindful for it too. Because if you consistently push yourself past that energy, you're borrowing that from tomorrow, and that's like burnout. That's where you're pushing past where you can reasonably do. And there are definite times in entrepreneurship, way more than most other careers, that you have to do that. But you also got to know when you don't have to do that and when you have to like really pull back, replenish energy, and truly take that. executive coach. The reason why I met her is because I read one of her books. It was The Entrepreneur's Guide to Keeping Your Shit Together.
Yeah.
At the time, I was so far past burnout, and the book said, like, you have to just take a vacation. And I think at one point I saw one of her other pieces of content where she's like, if you're really, really, really big burnout, you should take 6 weeks off. And I remember going to a conference that she was speaking, and I was like, hey, I heard that, and I saw that, but real talk, like, there's no chance I'm going to take 6 weeks off. I'm not going to even take a week off. So what else can I do? And her answer to me was, you better pack a bag, because like there's not many ways to do that. And so if you're not wanting to get to that point and then have a much bigger issue at hand, you got to manage that energy at the forefront.
So managing the energy is one, but you also brought up a good point too, is that when you find that certain things drain you, like, yes, I still need to be a part of it, but I don't need to do it all the time. So hiring the right people to also do it, because I work very well as a nerd in a dark room, working on PR campaigns and pulling all the nerdy data that I really need to do. And if you stuff me in a dark hole for 10 hours to work on a PR campaign, I'm coming out with solid gold. And that's not really going to burn that much energy from me, because I'm not using the extrovert energy. I'm just using the creative energy that I need to build the right program. And then I have my publicists who are out there nurturing relationships with journalists and editors and things like that, and things that would naturally burn my own energy. So as they're out there doing that, I could be in the dark hole doing nerdy things, seeing things that other people wouldn't see, seeing the angles that other people normally wouldn't see, and being able to do that too. So I do have a lot of those people in place on my staff, and that really helps me out with managing it. But from time to time, the rainmaker's kind of got to come out of his dark hole, and he's got to spend that energy, because nobody's gonna put in the 100% that I'm gonna put. They're gonna do that 70 or 80%, and they're really good at that. But every now and then, obviously,
you need that 100. Yeah.
That 100's gonna be the thing that is needed to close that deal. So kind of recognizing when it is, having the right people in place to allow me to shove myself into that dark hole and work on those things and do the things that give me energy rather than pull energy are critical. And that just come full circle, ties into everything we talked about building culture, hiring for the mission first, and all that too, and then hiring somebody that's not exactly like you, but sometimes more so the yin to your yang, and rounding you out best as an entrepreneur.
You know, when I took over the fourth company in Minnesota, I had to hire my first COO, and I'd never done that before. And at the time, I was going through interviews, and I was interviewing a bunch of people, and some of them were really cool, sharp executives. I was interviewing young people, old people, experienced for it. But I read a book called Rocket Fuel, and it talks about the dynamics between a visionary, the person with the big pie in the sky, vision for it too, and the integrator of the person who's the operational boots on the ground, rubber meets the road for it too, and how this book is all about that yin and yang, and how if you're an entrepreneur, you need to find the yin to your yang on that side. And when I followed this book, I ended up hiring a guy that I didn't even, it's not that I disliked him, I just never, he was way older, almost twice as old as I am, and pretty dang dry, very, very, very introverted, didn't laugh a lot, like he had a sense of humor, and I didn't know if I would like working with him, but it was the best decision I've ever made, because it was all about the mission alignment that we fully aligned on, and he was strong in all the areas I was weak in, and it gave him energy in all the areas that drained me, and like he stepped in, and it was the best like breath of fresh air I've ever had.
Yeah.
Because it was really methodical and intentional about choosing the right person.
It's extremely important too, and don't think that you need to do that the first time. You just keep doing it until you actually find that right person as well too. We're going to wrap up. Before we do, I want you to give 2 book recommendations to our audience for early stage entrepreneurs who are not generating $1 million in business every year.
Ooh. Okay. 2 book recommendations. If you haven't started like generating gobs of revenue, I'd say Lean Startup. It is a bit techy in that it talks about how to launch early experiments to validate like the problem, the solution that you have. And so it's slightly techy, but the basic fundamental premise of have your assumptions, validate the assumptions, don't invest a bunch of time and energy into it, build a small experiment is huge for you to test it. The other book would be what I mentioned earlier, which is The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. It talks about if you're wanting to jump on your own, that distinction between owning a job and being a tradesman versus a manager versus an entrepreneur. And those are 3 different dynamics that you have to be aware of, and you have to play all 3. You have to be the tradesman of doing the work. You have to be the manager for it, but you also have to be the visionary. And there's a different time to be each one of those, and it changes as you grow.
My two would be Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, and for me, I think that's great for entrepreneurs that aren't doing that $1 million in revenue yet, because it's gonna give you the fundamentals and the basic principles about how to be a good leader, and you know, it's not just about taking accountability for things. They talk a lot about leading up the chain of command and down the chain of command as well, both which are absolutely critical in entrepreneurship, because you're going to be in a position where you have both. And then the other one is, and I always botched the title because I swapped two words. You'll correct me if I how to win friends and influence business by Dale Carnegie.
Influence people. Yep.
Say it again.
How to win friends and influence people.
How to win friends and influence people. I always say business, and I think that's just great too, because like, especially if you're starting a company, you're the face of that company, you're the voice of that company, and everything in your marketing needs to be approachable and needs to be likable before people understand that it's meaningful.
Yeah,
so it needs to be likable first.
I love it. I read that book every couple of years still.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah. All right. That pretty much wraps us up. So I want to thank you for all of your time, all of your wisdom. I literally feel like I learned 10 years worth of entrepreneurship just by sitting here and prompting you with questions for you to talk. I hope that our audience gained something from it. I bet they did. I truly believe that I have the best world-class coach sitting across from me right now, and I couldn't be more thrilled that you're in the market helping entrepreneurs and constantly sending that elevator down to make a better society and a better world of entrepreneurs.
Thank you so much, man. This was awesome. I learned a lot from the conversation. Always love our conversations and chats. Thank you so much for having me, Brian.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So with Alex Golombiewski, I'm Brian Lockery, lead publicist and founder of ClearCut PR, and we're on a mission to get brilliant, hardworking entrepreneurs the publicity and coaching they deserve.